about the development of HR professionals. So this is one of those sessions that I hope, well, the name, like obviously if you register for this program, it talks about staying trendy. I don't know what trendy means to anyone, but I want to believe that if it means anything to you, it's not just about putting on your jeans and t-shirts or looking great for Fridays. It's about keeping up with updates, trends in the profession of HR. So I want to believe that all of us here are here because we're interested in staying trendy. So thank you. This is going to be, I would say, we shouldn't be here for more than an hour. It's a short and sharp session, and the focus is really on what's happening today and how do we keep abreast with the realities of work today, and how, as HR professionals, we can deliver value to our organizations as always. So without interactive, yes, questions. I mean, feel free to drop your questions in the chat. And let's just have fun. It's a lunchtime session as usual. For me, learning must be fun. So I'm going to share slides, and the slides are really about, things that we already know as professionals, but let's just see how it goes. Right, so I just want to be sure that everyone can see my slides. With technology, you always have to check. So my slides, if you can see my slides, just say, hey, or just raise your hand. You can see my slides, topic, HR skills for today's workplace. Are my slides visible? Just check in the chat. Yep, definitely, great. Yep, we can see it, good, good, good. So very short and sharp agenda, good, fantastic. Yeah, so the discussion today, really, what I really want to keep all of us abreast with is the future of work, which is now coined as the now of work, and basically give all of us perspective. It's been a couple of years now. Imagine it's 2 years since the pandemic. We're still in the pandemic, but people tend to say post-pandemic as if the pandemic is over. I don't think who has told us it's over yet. So we're going to look at what the now of work defined, look at some of the trends. I think the good thing about time is that we now have enough data to basically say what has happened in more recent times. So we have spent 2 years in the pandemic. We have a bit to say now. Look at the characteristics of today's workplace, because as HR professionals, before we can even say, what, these are the skills that we require, we need to obviously be very clear on the characteristics of today's workplace. And then we can now look at our role in the now of work. And of course, staying trendy. So we're going to look at those, a little bit about HR trends, but not so much. But more importantly, what are the skills that we need to deliver in this new work environment? And then, just questions that anyone has with regards to the now of work. Does this look like a decent agenda for, let's say, 35 minutes to about maybe 45 minutes, and then questions for 15 minutes? Great, good, good. So, yes, the now of work, I had a session about 2 weeks ago on a similar subject. In fact, for the last month, I've been talking about the now of work, and I'm like, what? Is this thing following me? I think I really need to maybe evangelize more on it. What do we mean by the now of work? It's, what happened to us a couple of years ago, the pandemic, was that, it accelerated. A lot of times people, when you ask people what happened, they say the pandemic, but it's not just about that we had a pandemic. Certain things happened as a result of the pandemic. It accelerated. There was a future of work that was preached about, and the now of work accelerated that future of work. So instead of, we were looking at 2025, 2030, but what seemed to have happened was that the now of work was like fast forwarded. Well, we say the now of work now because the future of work that we preached about, we were expecting it a couple of years, but because of the pandemic, and I need everyone to understand what happened in the pandemic. Now, there was a health crisis, right? But what happened was that a lot of governments, well, they mandated lockdowns. And as a result, sorry, there's a lot of interference. Can we mute everyone? Yeah. Okay, so as a result of the lockdowns, right, lots of businesses could not operate. So the only way a business could operate would be if they could work from home. And what that did for a lot of us was that technology obviously was the connecting factor. That was the collaborative tool. So we kind of like forwarded like 3 to 5 years faster. A lot of us were not prepared for that technological shift. And technology was the enabler that allowed us continue to work in the pandemic. So when people say the pandemic itself was an issue, but it didn't change. What actually changed the way work is today and what we see in the now of work was the acceleration of the future of work to now. So the COVID-19 pandemic basically put all of us in a time machine, and it just lifted all of us, fast forwarded us into a world of work, replacing that future of work to the now of work. So when we talk about the now of work, the future has come. So we can't be referring it to the future. The future that we preached about has now come, to be. So it's now of work. Now, it doesn't mean that there isn't a future of work still. There will always be a future. It's just that we kind of fast forwarded into the future that we thought would happen in a couple of years. So what has also happened is that the needs of talent has changed. I try to explain this to, clients or, people that I associate with, because I mean, as a consultant, sometimes, I've seen a lot of patterns, business owners, management staff, they seem to see like, oh, things are so different now. I mean, there was a particular client that was telling me that he thinks that something has happened to the staff since the pandemic. And I try to make people understand that the pandemic was a very unique, or is a very unique circumstance. For the first time, the whole world had a psychological shift. The whole world there was, like people experience, for example, you might experience grief as a family, but the whole world experienced grief. So it was just like a big, massive psychological trauma. There was a health crisis, there was lots of loss to businesses, there was lots of loss to human beings. So it was like, imagine a whole world, not in, sometimes usually what we see is maybe one part of the world there's a war, or another part of the world there's a crisis here, but the whole world was going through crisis at the same time. And the loss was so great in human life and in human economics that it affected everyone in different ways. I don't think there's anyone who wasn't affected in one way or the other. Either you lost your job, or someone who lost their job, or you lost a loved one, and it changed the way we work. And I try to use this example, like, for example, I tell people, imagine if you're a Gen Z, like, that's someone who's just entering the workforce. Maybe you're 21, 22, you're definitely under 25. Imagine you join the workforce remotely, because sometimes people are like, I mean, we're still battling with remote work and hybrid work. Think about people who joined the workforce remotely. They've never worked, like, they joined their organization remotely. Unlike some of us who've had like, over 20 years experience going to the office, imagine someone who their knowledge of the work environment, the first day they came, they were not even physically there. They were working remotely. So imagine the reality for that kind of person must be very, very different. Now, the now of work is also characterized by, I mean, if you look what is happening in Nigeria, and I'm bringing it to context now, amidst all of this that we experience, I mean, we have experienced a lot of rising prices, inflation, and employment. So there's economic factors that are already also at play here. Like anyone here, food prices it's not restricted to Nigeria. I mean, people in the UK, you are complaining about the same thing on gas prices. In Nigeria, we're going through the same thing. Everybody knows that the cost of running, like gas now, the cost of petrol, diesel, food, I don't know, everything is just going up. So why am I spending time on this? We need to understand our context, especially when I start talking about skills. for HR professionals, because these are some of the things that hold us back and prevent us from being effective in our roles, not understanding our context, because you can't deliver inwards to an organization and deliver value to your stakeholders when you don't have a good understanding of your external environment. And these are some of the skills that we're going to be looking at later. Now, just to also give us context, I'm going to draw on some practical things that are happening in the environment. Maybe we look around the world, some of the things that are trending, as well as the evolution of the employee and what is happening. Because as HR professionals, one of the key things we're hired for, we're like, I call us the chief, the chief advisor, people advisor, right? I mean, wherever you find yourself, you're like, special advisor on people issues. And we need to, and what are people issues? People issues are usually revolve around employees. So I want us to just, I'm going to just look at recent trends in the evolution of employee, just so that we can see and juxtapose how this affects us in the now of work. So if we look at the diagram, I don't know how visible it is, but it is visible to me. So I want to assume everyone can see it. If not, I'm speaking around it anyway. Now, we're so used to if it's in this part of the world, it was 8 to 5 or 8 to 6, 9 to 5, regular hours. And now I know quite a number of organizations here and outside the country that are still working from home. A lot of organizations have gone hybrid as they're, they've decided, a lot of firms have decided to go hybrid. So working from home is now something that people are more or less used to. Yes, some organizations have not can't work from home because of the nature of the work they've done. Some organizations have chosen not to work from home. I know quite a number of organizations that have called their employees back, and this is not restricted to here. I mean, it's all over the world. Some organizations have said, you know what, the pandemic, it's no longer a big scare as before. Come back to the office. Some organizations don't believe in that remote working is as effective as working in the office. But a lot of organizations have accepted that remote work is now the work style of today for different reasons. So what has that also brought about? That working in a corporate office is almost like, for these organizations who adopt remote work, they've accepted that you can work more or less anywhere. This means that the focus is also on output, as opposed to before, where obviously someone would have to see you physically, because working from home and working remotely comes with a whole different set of processes and practices to manage work. If you can't see someone, then you have to think of new ways to manage them, because it can never be the same way that you manage someone that you were seeing face to face. So working anywhere comes with its own nuances. It comes with its own peculiarities. For example, when we all worked in the office, using the office device would be a policy. But now that people are being onboarded from or working anywhere in the world or working anywhere in the country, now, what does this mean? A lot of people are using their own devices. So company policies around devices will obviously have to change. Obviously, security was always the issue around people using their own devices, and of course, ensuring that they have the right equipment. But imagine the kind of IT policies you have to have now, because when people are working remotely, I mean, you don't know what they're using. And a lot of people have their own computer. They're probably more comfortable using that as well. So using any device is one of the things that you would notice, as opposed to using company equipment. A lot of people are equipped with their own device because they are ready to work, in a different way. And as we know, also a lot of people are working gigs, or they're working second jobs, as well as freelance or running some kind of small business that they are. So using any device is also something that is happening much more frequently. The other thing I said, which is very much linked to working anywhere, and I think I mentioned it a little bit, is we can't focus on people's input, because input is usually, we have to focus more on their output, right? Like usually when people are in the office, you would monitor them. I mean, you could monitor them, you could see what they were doing at any given time. But when people are not there, you have to manage them different and focus on the deliverable. So, okay, so if you have deliverables, you have to look at work differently and be very clear what the deliverables of everyone's job is, even if it's on a weekly basis, even if it's on a daily basis, because you have to focus on the output, because that's the only way to effectively manage when you're not seeing someone physically. Now, what are the implications of this for the worker? Some other implications, including how people progress in the organization now. If people are not, if we're working differently, the traditional career ladders will no longer be as, they will no longer apply so much in a lot of organizations. Now, they will, of course, in traditional organizations. However, as people are working more flexibly, they are more likely to craft their own development and their own promotion or their own definition of success. So it's in the employee's hands, more or less, because, and why do I say this? People are not looking for, when you look at Gen Zs and Gen Ys, Gen Zs are the newest additions to the workforce. They just joined early 21, 22, and Generation Y, millennials are, I think the oldest millennial will be about 40, but the youngest should be about 25. And their idea of work is very different from older generations, especially, the more younger they are. Some of them are looking more for experiences as opposed to a career that will last them 25, 30 years. So if people have these kind of mindsets, I mean, every work opportunity might just be like, oh, you know what, I want to experience this for a bit. I see how it goes, and they have other things, several other things that they are juggling and they are planning to do. So that affects, they're not necessarily looking at your career ladder and thinking, oh, this is how I'm going to progress from level 1 to level 2, level 3, level 4. They never plan to stay that long in the first place. So, your career ladder doesn't really mean anything. They're going to create their own ladders. So this is also going to mean that, work is more customized as opposed to predefined work. The way we define work is just different from how it was before. Before, people would hoard information. Now you have to let the information flow so that everyone can do their work because they're dispersed. Before, everything would be, secure, but now that you need to collaborate, that information needs to be, shared so that, people can move on. Now, anyone with the way things are, when you even look at the internet, you look at social media, leadership. Sorry, I just need to make sure that we are admitting people that come in. Please, Fatima, can you just make sure that we're admitting the people that come in?
Yeah, doing that.
Yeah, all right, thank you. So let's just, continue from, the last thing I was saying was that, with the way social media is now, I mean, leadership, the truth is that leadership is about influence. A lot of us know that leadership is about influence. Social media allows a lot of influence through thought leadership or through followership. A leader is anyone who has followers. So the possibility of leading now, you have people in the workplace who have jobs, who are full-time employees, but they have leadership. I mean, they're influencers, or they are in a position of leadership, which the world makes so much more possible now than before, where leadership was restricted to people, in authority. It's no longer like that. Everyone now can have a voice. And I think people are really showing their voices, especially on social media. Technology is enabling that. Another thing that we noticed was before, there was so much reliance on email. Now that reliance is now on, it's not restricted to email. Before, email was the way that everyone collaborated, but with now the way we work, there's so many other tools that people use at work: Slack, Trello, Asana, different types of tools, WhatsApp, groups form, a lot of teams have WhatsApp groups that they belong to, and all these different, would I say, mechanisms or forums are used to collaborate at work, and it's acceptable that these are communication channels, unlike before. Right, so the focus is also now on adaptive learning. We learn as we go. A lot of us were put in this situation now where we were learning as we were going, you understand? So we just learn as we go. And it's just the way things are. Another focus was on, before it was all about corporate learning training, even though firms are still doing training needs for the organization and, training, but training or learning is more democratized. People need to take charge of their own learning. Learning is very individualized now. Just like we're here now, we're more or less, regardless of what your organization may have planned, your learning is really much more, should be adapted to your needs. And learning for everyone is different because we're at different points, not just in the skills that we require technically, but in your lives, you need to learn different things that will, that help you be more effective. Right, so that is some of those. It's very important that we understand this evolution, because if it's happening in our organization, then we are the thinkers, we're the architects for the solutions that will help our organizations manage these things better. This is a reality. As much as we even put in policies and practices, how do we manage these happenings, in the workplace? So these are very important. So now that we're good on that, the next thing I want to talk about is what are the characteristics of the modern workplace? I mean, even just looking at the evolution of the employee, I think that gives us a good, foundation for, so what is the workplace looking like now? Because this is very key for us as HR professionals. The way the workplace looks affects us in terms of the kind of skills that we need to actually be effective in that new workplace. It's flexible, there's a lot of flexible work. And when I say flexible work, even when people have not adapted hybrid or remote work models, they are working with, maybe for some of their needs, they're working with a workforce or a team, maybe that they have contracted. It's not unusual for many organizations to contract part of their work now with a team that is remote. Either you're buying, especially when it comes to technology needs, either you're working with a remote team in India or in Eastern Europe or America, or there's so many, or somewhere in the country, but not exactly where you are. So one of the realities we have to accept is that the modern workplace is mobile, and this is not just applied to, even if your organization is not mobile, like there will be some people that you work with that are free agents, so to speak, and who are working remotely and mobile. We can't deny that, the modern workplace has to adapt to technology. It's a reality. We were all catapulted into it, and the firms or the businesses that are still struggling would be businesses that, are still haven't accepted that to change or that ability to adapt to technology. And the new workplace is agile in operations, and agility is about being nimble. You have to be able to respond quicker. A lot of the businesses that struggled at the onset of the pandemic, it only took a couple of 2-3 months for some businesses to just, disappear. And why did that happen? Agility is very key. And your speed, your ability to iterate, to change direction very quickly is very key. If God forbid, if we are ravaged with another wave of the pandemic, if you, for example, firms that struggled and are just recovering now, what will happen to them? If they have not built capacity to be agile, it means that they're going to go through the same thing again and either shut down operations or go, completely closed. If you're a fan of lots of people in the world, when it comes to clothing, that is cheap and affordable and sometimes okay, are fans of Primark. And I think I just saw an advert about, I think it was last week, that they finally gone online. I couldn't believe that. And a clothing line that is, clothing shop that is so popular, they were never online. Throughout the pandemic, they didn't work. How they survived, only God knows, to be honest. I was shocked because so many businesses So many businesses went online, food businesses, everything went online. And to know that an organization as big as them, they didn't have, but they finally gone online. So should the pandemic, obviously, should we enter that kind of situation again, they will obviously be able to, they will do well because they have a huge followership. They have a lot of customers. And those are some of the things. Anyone who's not adapting and who's not agile, will definitely not, survive. Right. So what else is key? Effective collaboration. Definitely, we have to be able to effectively collaborate. We have to data-driven decision making. Like, if at this point we are still struggling with how to use data to make decisions, then I think obviously when we come to the key skills of HR professionals, we will see that that's a problem. It's going to be a big problem because the modern workplace is about decision making and data-driven decision making. So when we're talking metrics now, we've moved on from metrics. We need to really be very strong and with analytics because it's all about data-driven. How are you coming up with your decisions? I mean, how are you able to make up your mind without that data to enable you make the decision? So obviously, it's a given that we must be utilizing, a modern workplace will be utilizing digital tools. Some businesses, some organizations, some HR professionals are still struggling. They're still not digital, still seeing doing the same old things that they've always done the same way. And the truth is that in this time, one will definitely struggle. Communication must be effective, open now, and personal development is continuous. I don't think we can't even take that risk in today's workplace, to not continuously develop and evolve because it's waiting for no one, especially when you look at all the advancements happening, it's waiting for no one. Another big one is diversity, equity and inclusion. Big topic now. Everyone is speaking diversity and inclusion, but one of the things I say is that I don't think a lot of people understand. We understand diversity because that's the easy one. Get the numbers right. How many of this do you have? Make sure you have gender balance. Make sure you have this balance. But what about inclusion? Inclusion is about making people feel like they belong. How is inclusion measured? I think there's a huge gap still when it comes to understanding inclusion and how to, develop or build an inclusive organization. So so now moving on to HR proper. And I think the best way to talk about our role in the now of work is to look at the evolution of HR. Where have we come from? I think one of the easiest ways to speak about our past is to look at it in terms of technology, the way technology is described in terms of versions. So moving from HR version 1.0, we moved to HR 2.0, but anyone will tell you now that there is a business imperative to HR 3.0. So 1.0, and some of us are still there, and I think we should tell ourselves the truth if we're still there. 1.0 was all about compliance, administration, programs, jobs, functions, HR, our typical HR, thinking about best practice, benchmarking, doing that HR thing. HR has that intuition. We do HR the way, everyone can even do HR in the sense, like if you struggle or you have that kind of, some of us face as HR professionals where everyone thinks they know HR, like, that's HR like 1.0. Then we moved on to HR 2.0, which was more HR as a business partner. There was all that thing under HR process excellence. We started hearing about centers of excellence, shared services, HR business partner, all that fancy analytics came into the picture. We started talking, competencies and stuff. Yes, but right now, with what has happened with the acceleration of an advancement of technology and this push we've had into the now of work, HR 3.0 is here. And HR 3.0 has its own special characteristics, and its focus is more on cognition, cognitive ability, problem solving, thinking, mental capacity of the, now of when we talk about capability now, and we're now really, the distinguishing factor is we are really talking human capital now, the knowledge and the skills that give competitive advantage. The focus also is on the employee experience. There's a lot of personalization now. The world is demanding, and this is just like a social phenomenon. Transparency is required. All those days of hide, it's no longer acceptable. Oh, this thing is a contract, just hide your contract. Your pay scale is your salary is confidential. The world is demanding equality. If you notice, there's a movement, so that transparency is, transparency is required now. Managers have more responsibility. There's a lot of use of, obviously, technology, bots. Even I tell people now, even now, when I send people WhatsApp messages, I notice that they have WhatsApp for business. Some of them I get automated responses and things like that. This is the reality of today. Sometimes you go on a website as well, or you're immediately met with a chat box who is already asking you questions. If you're somebody who manages a community, you can automate a lot of things. So HR 3.0 is a lot to do with automation. How are you answering frequently asked questions in your organization? Are your employees still having to call you or, and ask you all these questions? All the things that are frequently asked, why are they not being answered now at this point by technology? Why are your employees not, why can't they go to a chat bot, or why is there's something that is automated that can give them answers to simple questions that everyone asks? What is the thinking now, and what kind of skills do we need in HR 3.0? Is design thinking. I mean, design thinking is borrowed from the IT sphere, software development. Design thinking, agile, the way of thinking. And that's why, when you even look at it, 3.0, and like I said, these are technology terms. However, lots of professions are borrowing now from technology. We're borrowing from software development. Technology is what is driving, it's enabling this digital transformation. So, a lot of the skills we need now, have a lot to do with, the technology way of creating solutions. We need insights. How are decisions being made now? We can't continue the old way. You have to, and when we talk analytics, unfortunately, analytics cannot be done on pen and paper, right? Analytics, because of the huge amount of data you would be processing, because analytics requires that you collect a lot of data, because it's the data that is going to be analyzed, and the analysis of that data that is going to give you insights that can help you predict or prescribe for your organization. It can only be done with software. I mean, even Excel can, but not your basic Excel. It will have to be the Power BI tools on Excel. We need to be able to make decisions based on data analysis, and those insights that we get, will help us with predictive and prescriptive analytics. So HR 3.0 is about predictive and prescriptive analytics. No longer what we did before that was okay for the organization, telling them, describing the organization, telling them how many women they have, how many men they have, what's revenue per employee. All those things are good, but unfortunately, they're no longer trendy. I mean, they're expected. It's old school stuff now. I mean, that is dashboard. Dashboard was 2.0. We've moved beyond dashboard. We need to be able to predict. We need to be able to prescribe. So critical skills are required now. Leadership is not just leadership. It's about diversity in leadership now. It's about inclusion in leadership. So the way things are being done now, when we're thinking organization, we're thinking, I mean, not just employee engagement surveys, employee experience. We're also thinking pulse surveys. We're also thinking net promoter scores, which is around, I don't know the kind of engagement survey some of us run, but questions about whether you would refer, employees would refer the organization to people they know or friends. Those kind of questions obviously help you tell how, would I say how loyal that you're, or how how your employees see you, like, how much they will promote your organization, how much brand ambassadors or brand advocates they are. Imagine you knowing that most of your employees will not refer your organization to a close friend, or that tells you a lot. So we need those kind of surveys, or those kind of questions in our surveys, because I know a lot of us are already doing surveys, but we need those kind of questions in our surveys that help us make critical decisions. So that's HR's role in terms of the now of work. So the only thing is that I pulled this out from the same study that I looked at, but I don't know if it's clear. But one thing I wanted to say, because I'm moving on to the skills now for HR professionals, HR 3.0, and like I said, all these documents will be shared at the end of the program. This will be shared, and any of the source materials, if you want them, please just send us an email, we'll send them to you as well. Is that it's more of like, this was a study done by John Virtue Institute and the IBM. And the focus is that it says that 3.0 is more like a business imperative. Like it's impossible for our organizations to go ahead without us upskilling as HR professionals. And we need to upskill, like it's an imperative on several areas. And why? The needs of the workforce have completely changed, right? People have gone through a psychological shift. The expectations of the workforce is so different. Sometimes I use this example, like, I think, the pandemic made a lot of people rethink their priorities in life. There was just a psychological shift. And for some people, it was really strong that, you just have a different attitude to life now. So there's a big thing to do with, for us and for a lot of people now, or employees, it's about experience. So personalized experiences, everybody's an individual. You can't do inclusion without looking at the differences in people more delicately now. So all those imperatives, they make us want to be more empathic to people's individual circumstances. Unfortunately, one size fits all. People don't want to be a one size fits all anymore. People want to do their own thing. So how do we accommodate those? Because that's the reality. And if you say, you know what, I can't, then you're going to lose out on a lot of talents. And that will just be your reality, because the people who are coming up, like I was giving the example of Gen Zs, imagine people who joined the workforce in the pandemic, like their views are going to be so different. And if you can't see that, then how are you going to manage that generation in the workplace? So key thing too about HR 3.0, skills are at the core. We can't move to 3.0 with 1.0 skills. We can't. 1.0 skills, no. 1.0 skills cannot deliver in a 3.0 era. It just can't. So skills are at the core, and we'll be looking at some of those skills. Data-driven decision-making and insights. Agile as a practice, being agile. Now, agile is a word. When I say agile, everyone knows what I mean. Like, oh, you're flexible, you're nimble. But agile is actually a software development methodology. These are skills that we need now if you're going to thrive in the world of work. If you do some Google research, you see a lot on HR, agile HR now, design thinking for HR professionals. Those are some of the courses that we will be rolling out soon, because it's a methodology that we HR professionals need to be conversant in now, as more and more organizations adopt that methodology for their organizations to help them to be agile. Because, and I think more importantly, maybe what I need to even say is, why are organizations even adopting agile methodologies? Because it's required now in this fast-paced moving environment. Prior to now, it was restricted to IT organizations who build products, and they need to be, they use the agile methodologies to build products because they are continuously reiterating. However, now the business landscape requires that we also use those same methodologies, and businesses cannot be using that methodology and then HR is left behind. So we can't be left behind. So we need to also develop agile methodology skills. So when I say agile, I don't mean just agile, the word, I mean agile in terms of the software methodology. As HR professionals, we can adapt it to our HR processes and the way we carry out or conduct business in our organizations. And then last but not least, transparency. It's no longer business as usual. Transparency is expected. Equity is expected. Diversity is expected, and you can't carry out those things without being transparent. So moving on now, a little behind schedule because of this 10 minutes. I'm just still looking at time. What are key action areas now as HR people? What do we need to do to catch up and make sure we're abreast? We need to look at employee performance management obviously differently. The traditional performance management systems will no longer be effective in the now of work. Why? Obviously, if we focus on outputs and if we focus on being agile as well, then obviously we have to measure employee more continuously and more transparently. We can't be bogged down by the traditional, okay, let's gather all the performance appraisal forms, let's take 1 month to analyze them. And now we need to do it continuously and transparently. We probably need to focus on coaching our leaders. We probably need to, focus on giving better feedback because it's going to be more continuous. So we would need to practice HR differently. We need to practice performance management differently. We would need to invest in leadership. I mean, leadership, I always tell people your leaders can make or break you, so we would need to continue to partner with leaders, but invest in the new role of leaders. We need to create those leadership pipelines. And it's much harder than ever because, if you're looking for the leaders and they're not there in the sense that, they have other plans outside of your organization, then we really need to think, how we can continuously build our talent pipeline with a different set of people who have a different mindset on what career is to them. The third thing is what I've already mentioned before. We need to build capacity in terms of agile and design thinking. These are methodologies. If organizations are going to be agile, then HR professionals, we need to understand what agile is as a software development methodology, and we need to apply it to each of our practices and processes so that we can, create that readiness for our organization, but also be ready as professionals. A big thing happening now is obviously pay for performance and skills in a fair and transparent way. Those days are gone where you're looking at tenure of service and you're paying maybe the people who have stayed longest in the organization, you're paying them the most. Now you're paying for skills. The people who have the skills, I tell people all the time, money follows skills. The people who have the skills will be the one that you would pay. The people with the scarce skills would be the ones who demand, who would, command income. So those days of grade levels, determining salary, we really need to rethink those because the skill sets you would pay for the most valuable skills now are not necessarily the most experienced person. We would also need to continuously build skills at work. We would need to design intentional experiences. If some employees are coming there because of the experience, and the truth is that business is a team sport. You can never have an agenda to not have employees. And as long as you have them, then we need to be more intentional about employee experience. We definitely need to modernize our HR technology. If we don't use technology now, I can't think of how anyone would be still doing recruitment manually. Like, how are you going to manage all those CVs? We really, really need to move on from those practices of telling people, email your CV if you're dealing with 1 or 2 people. But if you're really seeking talent, we really need to move away from those practices. So we need to modernize our HR. We need to be thinking of digital transformation, not just for the organization. If your organization has carried that or, has started that imperative, then, what about digital HR transformation? How are you guys, how is your team doing in that aspect? And remember that digital transformation is not just about buying a software tool. It's a mindset, and I think that's a mistake a lot of people make. They feel like once we buy that software, which software can we buy? Then we're ready once we, implement it. But no, digital transformation is a mindset. Agile is a mindset. Design thinking is a mindset. If you don't have that mindset, first. It's a culture as well. Like your team and you has to adopt that culture of using technology. If you're not comfortable with it, no matter the software you spend money on, the implementation will be a disaster. You spend a lot of money, and at the end of the day, you'll not see value because people's minds are still in 1.0. Data-driven insights I've spoken about already. We need to reorientate and reskill ourselves. I think I've spoken on this. And then also think about how we can source talent strategically. There's this thing I say about talent now. We need to move away from buying talent. There's too much focus when it comes to HR professionals. We keep thinking that we need to buy all our talent. And even business owners and employers still think that way. The now of work is so different. You will not own all your talent. You don't have to. To thrive as an organization, you do not have to own your talent. What I mean by own, the usual way of giving people a permanent contract, offer letter, if people are, that's not what people want. A lot of people don't want that anymore. And a lot of people, these people are also talent. What we should be asking ourselves is how can we still enjoy this talent? Despite, their needs. So we shouldn't think in the traditional way of always buying talent. Open your minds to borrowing talents. You can borrow people for a while. You can borrow Adora. You also think about, you can still buy, right? But you have other options. You can bot, which is focus on technology. There's chatbots. So some of the roles, you may be really thinking now, a lot of clients are always calling, nobody responds. You can get a bot, you don't need a person, right? So that role could have been that role of answering all the emails, all the first responses to email could be botted. So you have options now, and there's some people who have been in the organizations for a long time, and maybe their skills, they might just not be the right culture, the fits. You've tried to reorientate them, you've tried to coach, you develop them. You can also, your organization can be lean and function without those people. So there are options now. We shouldn't think in the traditional way. You don't need to own all your talent to succeed as an organization. Consider borrowing and botting and buying and buying. So those are the things that we need to open up ourselves in. So staying trendy is all about thinking differently, knowing that we are living in, that HR, if we're going to do design thinking and agile, then HR is more of the product now. It's all about collaboration. We have to think differently about talent. We need to think differently. Open our minds to talent marketplaces. It's not just restricted to your locality. It's not restricted to people who want a permanent job. Just be open so that you can get the best of both worlds. It's all about experiences as well. People are looking for experience. When we mean experience, it could be a short experience. It could be a 1-year experience. It could be a 2-year experience. They don't necessarily want to be with you forever. HR, we need to think about owning the business transformation agenda. It's not something that they call you to the table afterwards. It's something that you are part of from the onset. We should be the ones encouraging our businesses to transform digitally and be prepared for the now of work. We should also be skilled in helping our organizations prepare for multiple futures. Skills such as scenario planning will help us think about the various options. And that's why I said some of the things that are very key now as HR professionals is that critical thinking, that cognitive ability. Like we should be the brain boxes, special advice on people issues, that's like some superpower. And we should be able to give data-driven decisions, help our organizations, prescribe the future to them. We should understand DE&I, diversity and inclusion, and help our organizations understand it's important. I think a lot of us HR professionals are still struggling with diversity and inclusion. It's not just about the numbers. The diversity is the easiest part. It's about inclusion. Why is inclusion important? Nobody can ever perform to their fullest potential if they do not feel they belong. So you can never get the best of anyone who feels that they are bringing 1/10 of themselves to work, or they can't bring their whole authentic selves to work. So a big question we should be asking ourselves is, how do we measure inclusion? It's not just about measurement. Diversity is the easy part. Inclusion is different. How do you measure inclusion? How do you measure that, you really make people feel like I can be here? It's not enough to give me the numbers and say, oh, you know what, we now have 5 women on the board. How do they feel? Or we have 5 women in management now, or we have 5, but how do you make them feel? You can, the things and the policies you carry out can still hinder them, but you have the numbers now, but they are not comfortable, or they don't last long, because somehow they have to do other things that, are in conflict with their, their development or their future or their needs, right? We need to also think from, we need to be digitally literate. I think we need to, any of us who is still struggling with analytics, we need to have passed that stage by now, because there's no way we can, provide that support to our organizations if we don't have, and like I said, it's software, but if the software even does the analytics for you, how will you interpret it? So we need to develop ourselves, and we need to be, we need to be very clear that we're in the skills economy, and the future is skills, and how we manage those skills determines our future as professionals. So one of the last slides I want to share is about, I think this was the largest study, most recent study that has been done by the David Ulrich Group, RBL. I think it was released last year, about the skills needed, HR professionals, the competencies, 5, now restricted to 5 competencies. If you've been in the HR profession for about 20 years, you would, if you're familiar with David Ulrich's work of the RBL, you would have noticed the initial competencies for HR professionals. Now, this is the latest one. I mean, the initial ones were around HR experts, employee advocates, change agent leader. Now, it doesn't even look like anything. I mean, I've been following this for like 15 years. It doesn't even look like anything that was released in the late 1990s, early 2000s. It's so different now. I mean, look at the skills needed. Well, look at the competencies. Even if we look at this and we don't understand what this is talking about, then it says we have a gap and we need to fill that gap. And this is something that I want to urge all of us to do. So I'm going to just explain them one by one, because these are the competencies that we need. I'll start with accelerate business. I mean, a lot of us are HR professionals. Yes, we all experienced the trend of HR as a business partner. But when it comes to accelerating business, it's beyond partnering with the business. If you remember at the very beginning, I said something was very critical. You can't be critical, or you can't help an organization fully and effectively if you don't have a good understanding of business context, right? So our knowledge needs to be beyond understanding our industry and organization. So understand your organization. So if you have that polarized mindset of, oh, this is not HR, or my focus is people. So we have to have a big understanding of the business, so a big part business acumen. We need to understand our industry. We need to understand if we're in a country, we need to understand our nation, our region, and the global space and how it affects. So we need skills in, stakeholder, like being on the systems thinking. That's a core change management skill. So stakeholder management, because systems thinking, it focuses on the fact that, the businesses are a system, they're part of a system, and a lot of the inputs into a business or the things that affect businesses are from the external environment. So as HR professionals, we have to understand context, because a lot of things that are affecting our business are, the environment. So if you ignore government, politics, regulations, regulators, how are you going to, serve your business adequately? So accelerating business is about us having a deep understanding of systems thinking, business acumen, business, thinking, so that we can contribute effectively as business people and, business-minded people who have extensive knowledge. So that's about accelerating business. And mobilizing information is still iterating the same thing I've been saying. It's about analytics, being able to use data to make decisions. So data helps with insights that enable effective decision making. So it's very key, this mobilizing information. How do you use, what's your data literacy? How well do you understand, data to the extent that you can use it to help your organization make effective decisions? Advancing human capability, of course, it has to do with, as the name implies, what leadership development, talent development, but more importantly, also, when we say advancing human capability, in this data-driven world, in this technology-driven world, it extends to, even using, what would I call it? Augmenting the human with machine. I don't know if you're a fan of Terminator. I'm a fan of Terminator, the movie. And if you watch the latest one, I think it was released last year or 2 years ago. And the latest, if you watch Terminator, it's usually about, the fight is usually man and machine, but the latest Terminators, they are augmented humans. So they are much, they're trickier, right? So advancing human capabilities is beyond just, learning and development initiatives, talent development and leadership development. It's about how you can advance the human capacity using technology, whether it's software, whether it's robots, whether it's bots, whether it's, every time people think of robots, they always think it's robots moving around, those physical ones, but software is robots. Bots, those chat bots, those, AI, they're all robots as well, because they are programmed and they do what you tell them to do, right? So how can we build, those, that capacity is very key. So advancing, a key part of our role is advancing that human capability. And imagine like you being at the helm of driving your organization towards understanding that human capacity is beyond, it's not just about training programs or learning on the job. It's also about knowing the right mix, whether it's coaching, whether it's training, whether it's, using software or, those kind of things. Fostering collaboration is a very key part of our role. Sorry, the last thing I wanted to mention about advancing human capability is you can't advance human capability without a deep understanding and appreciation of diversity and inclusion. And remember what I said in my last point, no one can ever be their true authentic self. No one who is not their true authentic can ever perform to their fullest potential. And that's why the agenda of inclusion is so much, because a lot of times people hold back because they don't bring their full selves to work. So, anything or any kind of initiative or program that allows people, come out fully, allows you to enjoy their diversity. You can't enjoy the diversity in people without inclusion. Diversity is just the starting point. Inclusion is where the real deal happens. So we can't advance human capability when we're still struggling with inclusion, right? So a big part of that agenda is inclusion. Fostering collaboration begins with self-awareness. How do you foster collaboration, which is about relationships, promoting relationships between, people, you and people in your organization? You have to be self-aware. So two main things about fostering collaboration: your level of self-awareness, as a person, how do you interact and relate to other people? Build your own self-awareness so that we can work on our weaknesses, our strengths, before, we can't effectively collaborate or build collaboration in our workforce when we're struggling ourselves. So two main points: your own self-awareness as a professional, and then building relationships with networks internally and external to your organization. And then think, have I moved around? Yeah, I think I've moved around. Then the last is simplifying complexity. All these kind of come together to help us simplify complexity. There's a lot of uncertainty in today's world. And when you look at all that uncertainty, you need to be a really mentally able, capable person to synthesize all that information and simplify it. So bringing it all together, I think, it's a very intellectual role that we have here. And if we feel that these are things that we're struggling with, then we need to develop our competencies in that area, because obviously this is what is going to make us valuable as individuals. Yeah. So, I mean, these are more or less, I think, just the last slide here is just summarizing, what I've said. So those are those 5 big competencies. And like I said, we can look at the RBL websites. There are lots of data on that in the RBL group. But what do we need to stay on top of things? We still need our HR specific skills, but we just need to do them in a different way. We still need to recruit. We still need to manage performance. We still need to reward. We're still doing all those things. We still need to do the administration, but in a different way, right? So you're going to be dealing with administration because you have technology. You should be processing the administrative parts much quicker. We should be managing talents in a different way. So we're still doing recruitment, but we shouldn't be, sieving through CVs. We shouldn't be collecting CVs, and, neither should we be, looking at emails, we should be using software. There's so much options now for us to use software to sieve off all those things so that we can respond to people immediately who don't fit the criteria. All these tools are readily available cheaply now. And what else do we need? Cultural awareness and sensitivity. Remember, I said inclusion is big on the agenda, but a lot of us HR professionals, we haven't gotten there in terms of our own knowledge of why is it important and why is it so, why is there a lot of noise about it? And we cannot sell something that we do not understand to our organizations. Maybe you have an MD that doesn't really understand diversity, inclusion. Why is it so important these days? We need to obviously improve our own understanding, develop ourselves so that we can obviously help our organizations, make that move as well. We need the business skills, the business acumen. We need to continue coaching leaders, managing leaders, advising leaders. We need the commercial awareness. I mean, these are things that they've been telling us we need for 20 years. So I'm not going to focus on that one. I think it has been a going battle with HR people that we need to develop our human, our business acumen. Soft skills, I think it's a given. We need to have those soft skills, relationship building skills. Well, one thing, the area I would really love us to look at and focus on is our data and digital literacy. Today, we can't be left behind. This is not just about using Zoom or using Excel, right? This is about being analytical and data driven. This is about having very strong, beyond dashboards, this is about having very strong HR reporting skills. And this is about having a very strong command of technology. So developing ourselves in Agile, developing ourselves in Scrum, project management, design thinking, for 2 reasons. Why? Because technology is at the helm of affairs now. And secondly, those are the kind of skills that we need to be able to adapt and to be agile. We're living in ever evolving, uncertain times. Agility is very key. And these are the skills that keep us agile and keep us up to date. And I think I always say to people, no matter where you go, like these skills will always be, they'll always be required. It never runs out of fashion, technology. I mean, my background is in technology. I studied IT in the year 2000. What's this year now? Can't believe it now. It's 22 years ago. No, 1990. What's 22 years ago? No, I studied IT in 1998. So I'm just saying, sometimes I look at the kind of things we're doing and I'm like, I can't believe it. We're still saying the same thing like 20 years later. Maybe it's because my background is in IT, but it makes you appreciate that technology is a skill that it just never runs out of fashion. When I In the year 2000, just before, like I said, I studied IT in about 1998. We were told that the world was just going to, like, the clocks were all going to go 000 by the year 2000. And a lot of us were like upskilling. And that was one of the reasons why I studied IT. Like, I wanted to be among the people that helped or saved us from going resetting to 000. And I look at it now and I have no regrets, because this is 20 years later. You know, those skills are still helping me in my career. And, you know, I think it's helped not just myself, it's really helped me, like, would I say, advocates on to HR profession. I love, like, helping people keep abreast with these things. And I think it's something that we should all do with our organizations, help us keep abreast. So that's, it looks like that's it with a nutshell. Yeah, so in terms of time, I think I'm happy to take questions now. And I hope that we were able to learn something, a thing or two. And yes, we will get the slides and the recording for the training. So everyone who is here, and I think all the people who signed up anyway, we're going to send the link to everyone. And, I just, maybe I just want to take a quick poll just as we end, before I take questions. I want to find out, like, everyone here is, I'm not sure I can start that poll, but just tell me how. Okay, I'm not able to start the poll, but I want to ask people, how ready do you feel you are for the now of work? Now that I've had, with all this, like, how do you feel? I mean, do you feel you're ready? Or do you feel like you're not ready at all? Or how do you feel, like, with everything that I've said so far? Are you prepared for, the work you have to do? Or are you concerned? Or, are you like, what, you just came here to just check that you're okay and you feel good that yes, you're definitely good. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how ready are you for the now of work? That's my question to you. So someone said 7 out of 10. I'm very, very happy about that. And I would like to hear from everyone else. And so thank you very much. I'm taking questions for anyone who has questions. So feel free, just raise your hand. The references to all the, this is not my own stuff. I'm a consultant, I read. That's why, so the references are at the end of this, the slides, and, it'll be shared with everyone. And, and yeah, that's it. So please, questions, comments so far. Hands, just put your hands up and you're free to speak. This is a meeting session, so anyone can speak if you raise your hand. So yeah, happy to answer questions. I think questions are very good for us here. We came here to stay trendy, learn, make sure that we keep abreast with what is happening today. So I'm happy to answer questions. Thank you. Someone said 4. Don't worry. 4 is, it doesn't even matter if you're 1. I always tell people it doesn't matter where you are now. What matters is that we know where we're going and we can close the gap. And that's why learning is a continuous, it's a continuous process. So I'm taking questions now. Questions. So I'm going to see whether there's any hands up. Please just raise your hand if you have a question. The questions is where the real learning happens. So looking forward to that. I'm looking at the chat. Where's the people? Yeah, okay. Is there any hands up? Okay. Right, okay. Right, so please hands up if you have a question, or is it in the comments? I think the chat is moving too fast, so I'm not able to really see what's in the chat. Let me see. Let me check if there's a question in the chat. Right, thank you very much. Yes, someone said, let me look. Okay, right. Does anyone want to say anything? If we're happy with the session so far, or any comments, or, I'll be happy to answer any questions so far. Okay, Diane, you have a question. Do you want to speak? That's fine. You can unmute yourself, I think. Let me see. Let me look. Trying to. let me see what I can unmute you or someone else can. Right. So Diane, you can ask your question. I've asked you to unmute yourself. Diane, yes.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hi, Diane. Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you so much. It's always beautiful when I have to listen to some of your teachings.
Thank you.
Yes. So mine is, okay, yes. Yeah, I feel like I'm on average, you know, with all what you've shown to us. But for HR, it's always like it's on ending. It's on ending. Especially when you have to deal with different kind of companies, and you have to deal with coming companies that are coming up. So you have different way they handle their change management. So you have to, what you do for A is not what you're doing for B. So again, and when it comes to payroll, that's even my problem. Some of them you come, they're just doing the normal Excel, you know, to send source code and everything, send it to the bank. Then the other one you come is like manual computations and all that. I don't know if there is a way that, I don't know. Is there an actual, I'm always confused. Is there a kind of payroll system that someone is supposed to learn? Because I want to also go into, I'm thinking of going into the data and Power BI and all that. There's a package for it that I'm trying to do. I've not just had time. Trying to look at, if I go into that, it's going to be good, great. But I also want to have a full knowledge of the payroll. What is acceptable to companies? Just all companies.
Okay, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, I think with things like payroll, obviously, there's only one way of doing. When I mean one way, like payroll is either accurate, correct, or is not. In the sense that what is different with organizations is maybe the way they break down their compensation, right? Yes. But payroll, either way, it doesn't matter how much they break it, like there is a right way of doing payroll. What I would say is that wherever organization you find yourself, encourage them to automate, okay? Just encourage them to automate and then look at the way they've done payroll and see whether it is aligned with good practice. Because what I find with payroll is that honestly, the biggest issues around payroll in Nigeria, let me use the example because it may not be the same elsewhere, is the inconsistency of the payroll, the pay structure. And when I mean the pay structure, I mean the compensation breakdown, right? And that inconsistency causes issues when you compute. So what I mean by issues, it may give you some, would I say, like, sometimes people end up being, would I say, paying too little to their pension, or paying too much to their tax, all because of the way it has been structured. So I would say that, you know, the most important thing is that you're able to know what is good practice, so that wherever you find yourself, you can advise your management to adopt a better practice. The other day, someone told me that somebody, the organization they just joined, had basic and housing and the elements that are affected by pension in Nigeria, basic housing and transport, at 7% of the total package. I mean, come on. Yeah, you know that is just pure, you know, that's not right, okay, from any, but I know why they're doing that. I know they're doing it because they don't want the burden of pension to be high and things like that. But these are things that as HR professionals, if we understand payroll, we will be able to advise, you know, correctly. So that's what I would just say. Just encourage people to automate, understand what the management is trying to achieve. But if you find that what they're trying to do is not compliant in terms of legally, then you need to advise them to do otherwise.
Okay. Thank you so much.
No problem. So we actually,
if there's anything we can learn on that, like the normal practice, maybe
you can always check out, we have payroll training. So I don't know, like, you can always look at, I mean, we have it on e-learning as well, the payroll. So you can check out kendallconsulting.com/courses for payroll. We've done several, there's even some free programs. We've done so many I remember last year we did a payroll, demystifying payroll. So
Yes, I
please,
think the first one that you did.
yeah, yes. So look at those and I'm sure you find a response.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Chidima.
Hi, Adora.
Hi, Chidima. How you doing?
Okay, so firstly, I'd like to say thank you. I'm always excited when I have to, attend your training, whether paid or otherwise. Thank you so much. Once again, you've exposed us to some of the things, the latest in the industry. But my question goes this way. How do you manage? Because literally our job is to advise. A lot of times we know what we're supposed to do, but how do you manage a management that is not properly tuned into the now of work?
Yeah.
But would rather they're more comfortable, maybe because of past experience. I don't know if as employees whether we are ready for the now of work. So you tell somebody work from home, and then the person sees it as an opportunity to go sell maybe honey in the market or cook for the children or just turn off the phone or log off completely, and then you're trying to get the person. So when management has had that kind of experience, it leaves a sour taste in the mouth. And then now you're saying this is what is obtainable, especially with Gen Z, you want to retain your talent. How do you even deal with that on one hand? And then how do you even deal with employees that do not understand what it means to be remote? Because people are advocating for it, but they do a lot of time. I don't know how ready we are as staff members to. Yeah, so that's my question. Thank you so much.
That's very interesting. Thank you, Chidiman. It's a very valid question. I like to give the example that, you see, whenever you decide something, okay, let me take it from two angles. First of all, when you're working with a management, you understand one of the critical to every HR professional is you need to understand your CEO or your CEO, especially if you're working directly with this field, what they're trying to achieve. You need to be very clear, because some of the mistakes that I see HR professionals make is you try and start going on a different agenda. It's very clear. You need to be clear on the agenda of the CEO. And then, of course, where you, as an advisor, you advise and school and coach, right? But ultimately, remember that that person is going to make a decision of the business. If they decide they're going right, you cannot be going left. And if you see that they're going right and you want to go left, then you really have to rethink whether you can remain in that organization, because you have to work hand in hand with that person. A key part of your role, if you're my advisor, you're basically one of the people who are accelerating my achievement of my objectives. So we cannot not be in sync. So a big part of your role is to be in sync with your CEO, because if you're not, you can't win. You can't be going left and your CEO is going right. So so that's the first thing. You need to get buy-in, especially. But you see, you can't give buy-in. You can't get anyone's buy-in, and that's why data comes into account. People, CEOs, business owners are driven by data. The language of the business is numbers. If you're trying to speak English to somebody who understands numbers, then you're never going to ever get their buy-in. And that's why we talk about data-driven decisions. You're trying to convince someone that the now of work is the way. How have you shown him that it affects productivity? With the examples that you cited, it's not even a good option for such an organization, because the people will not work. If somebody goes to buy things instead of working remotely, then they are not being productive. Then why should you even try to convince the MD that working from home is a good option? It's not. Given such circumstances, it's not. So we need to not also, as professionals, just think because something is trendy, it means that we must adopt it. No, you must be very clear on the maturity level of your organization, the kind of people. Working from home is a mindset. It's a competence. Some people can do it well and some people can't. So everybody is not equipped to work from home, because working from home is a competence. Just the same way that being an HR professional has competencies. Being a remote worker, there are competencies required to work remotely effectively. If we measure your competence from your environment to your mindset, For example, somebody who doesn't have the space to work from home, or who doesn't have adequate internet, or who doesn't have clear deliverables, is not a candidate for working from home. They will not work from home effectively. So if your organization has not been set up, or your employees do not have a mindset for working from home, you will keep struggling with their output. And the truth is that, and that's why when it comes to remote working, we have to measure outputs, because there's no way you can measure someone you don't see without looking at what they deliver. You understand? And I say it clearly, and I do that with people that work with me, is what I see that is the delivery, is the output that helps me judge whether work is being done or not, because I can't come to your house. But once I see that work is not being done, I can already tell that there's underperformance. And then based on our performance management system, then we apply so my point, Chidinma, is that, this whole now of work is, we need to, working from home is not an imperative, okay? It's something that we've all, where we've been enabled to be able to work from home. But bear in mind that this is Africa, this is Nigeria. We are not, that technological advancements, right, that's propelled, that's in a country. America has 91% internet penetration. The UK has about 95% internet penetration. Nigeria has about 36% internet penetration. And that internet, honestly, I'm surprised that we're still online. It's not the same. So we are not, so you need to be sure that if you want to adopt such now of work, you need to equip your team. You need to equip, and when I mean equip, from schooling to the mindset to preparing, they need to be ready. And you need to also have systems to manage remote working, because remote working is not just about telling everybody work from home. If there's no system, then the work is, you'll see there will be no productivity. And you say, oh, you were doing working from home. No, working from home, everybody's not ready. Everybody's not work from home ready. I know of a firm now, working from home, I mean, they've been practicing it for the past 2 years since the pandemic. If you're not working from home effectively, HR will call you back to the office. Let's coach you and let's help you come back to the office, because obviously working from home is not working for you. If you improve, then you go back. If not, but I'm just trying to give you examples of some of the things, so don't think it's a blanket. It's not a blanket. You understand? It's not, it's never a blanket. But if you must work from home, then your organization must be ready and your employees must be ready. And they must understand there's also policies for working from home. You need to have those things in place. People need to understand the implications. They need to have the tools. They need to have the environment. They need to have the setup. If not, they won't work from home effectively. And we need to bear that in mind. Okay. So I have a question from, okay, Aritz. Okay, Aritz, Paul. Thank you. Aritz, I've asked you to unmute. Okay, I'm not, right, Aritz, okay. I've asked you to unmute. If not, Aritz, no, I can't see your hands up. Aritz, are you there? I see your hands up. I've asked you to unmute, but you're not unmuting. Right, okay, so can we go, someone else, anyone else have a question? Chidinma Kester, yeah, you can unmute. I'm asking you to unmute now, yeah. Yes, Chidinma.
Hello.
Can
you hear me?
It's perfectly loud and clear.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this session. My question would be, so where does flexibility, does the flexible work hours come in? Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, for example, when we say they now work and people want flexible hours, they want to be able to choose their time. And in a situation where you're working with a team, a group of people, and you want to choose yourself, how does that work really? Because I feel
okay, I think I've lost her, but I think Chidima, I can't hear you anymore. Okay, go on.
Interactions. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes, go on. Sorry, I couldn't hear you anymore, but what I would do is, your mic is off, but I think I can maybe answer a little bit about, what you said around, people flexible. The thing about flexible, like I said, working from home comes with a different style of managing performance. The focus has to be on outputs. You also have to know whether it's not every role is not a working from home role. So you need to understand the goals of the team. It needs to be very clear, whether, that role is a remote role or a hybrid role. Every role, flexibility is positive because flexibility allows people, work their way around in terms of, work at times that is more convenient for them. However, it doesn't change the objectives or the goals of the team. Okay, so of course, if people have responsibilities that have timelines, you can work flexibly and still maintain your timelines. If in the name of working flexibly, you're not able to perform in terms of deliver, then obviously, you're not working effectively. And the truth is, some people are try to have their cake and eat it. That you work flexibly doesn't mean you don't have a job, or it doesn't mean that you can go and get 3 or 4 jobs. You still have to deliver to those jobs. So if you think that, because some people think that, oh, you know what, because I work at home now. In fact, I remember, a friend telling me about someone, a colleague of theirs that they called, and the person said, oh, I'll be at work tomorrow. They called them to get an assignment, said, oh, I'm not at work today. I'll be at work tomorrow. But it's like, well, you're supposed to be working from home and you're saying you're not at work today. So, and she could hear the background and could hear that maybe she was outside in the market. Some people have that mentality, but obviously, if you're working in a team setting, you see that those people will not meet the objectives of the team because they're going to, they're not going to deliver their as and when due, right? So those things become performance management issues. And of course, if it persists based on your performance management policies, then you'll have to kick in. So working flexibly does not give anybody it doesn't give anybody the leeway to be irresponsible. We still all have to be responsible and accountable for the work we do. So it doesn't change anything, right? So I just say, just have those, it's still business as usual. I'm just saying that you can work from home, but if you're struggling to work from home, then, then obviously you're not the right person for the role because this is the role now. And we need to obviously know how we manage those things. Okay, so Olushola, I've asked you to unmute yourself. Okay, I think that's Olushola, right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Good afternoon, Madam Adora. It's really nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Good afternoon. How are you? Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah. The question I've got is really with these Gen Z, borders around Gen Z, these days. Can you hear me?
Yeah, Gen Z's, right?
Gen Z, right? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No? Yeah. Like in my own organization, I'm working in an organization that has to do with distribution, logistics, and things like that. Yeah. And these days, you'll find out that, of course, there is high turnover, the kind of employee that I work with. Okay. Yeah. So you now find out that in trying to manage them, there have been a whole lot of indiscipline, things like that. Yeah, and you know that my hands are really kind of, tight because if I lay stuff off, I don't have, alternative, or even as I speak to you, my pool is so dry. No CV is coming in and all that, Now, my problem now is, how do we manage this kind of, I would call it a tight situation for me. Yeah, because I wouldn't say because I want to keep staff and I encourage, in discipline. Yeah. And at the same time, I have to discipline because as an HR person, that is really the job. Because at some point in time, if you don't have to, carry out one of my core job as to discipline, then work will not go on. So I'm really in a kind of, and the most kind of group of people that borders around is this issue of density. For instance, they want flexibility. You know, I've got this time between 8 o'clock to 5 o'clock, resume to work 8 o'clock, get up 5 o'clock. But you'll find out that these days, many of those time will even get to work like 8:45, 9 o'clock, and they have this mindset nothing will happen.
Yeah.
So, yeah, please, can you kind of advise how can one handle this kind of situation in the workplace?
Well,
Okay.
I think, is this a remote workplace or is this a physical workplace?
Pardon?
Is this a remote workplace or is this a physical workplace? Like the time now you're talking about, is this remotely? Are they checking in remotely or are they
No,
checking
no,
in
no, 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 it's not remotely, no, physically.
physically? Yeah,
Physical.
yeah,
Physically, yes,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So the thing is that the truth is that workplace, what I would suggest is some of the, and this is like, I'm going on both sides now. Some things are what I call deal breakers and some things are not. Okay. For
Okay.
example, if you talk about flexibility means
Yeah.
that, for example, in terms of work hours, the start time can be 8. If you talk flexibility, it means that you might have a start time that is between 8 and 10.
Okay.
And if you have a start time that's between 8 and 10, then the closing can be between, let's say, 4 and 6. That's flexibility, right? And, you know, when you have those kind of flexible hours, right? And then maybe lunchtime can be anytime between 12 and 3. But anytime between 12 and 3 might be lunchtime, but 1 hour anytime between, that's flexibility. Okay? You're less likely to have issues when you have this kind of flexible timings, as opposed to saying the start time is 8, then you're likely to have some 8:30s and some 8:45s. That's not a flexible, it's too rigid. If you ask me, even for me, it's too rigid. But if there's a window and then somebody's now coming at 11, then you know you have a problem. But if you do 8 to 10, and then closing is 4 to 6, I think you're giving people leeway. I think that's what flexibility is about, because everybody, and when you consider, like, I want to assume that you're in, where are you? Are you in Lagos by any chance?
I'm in Lagos.
Lagos is a difficult place to maneuver. You understand? If you tell people come at 8 every day, you know, you're like looking for trouble, because, you know, depending on where they're coming from. So I would say for this particular situation, I would say, you know what, put a window, you know, because saying 8 o'clock.
I've got a window. There's a window. There is a window.
To when?
8 to 8:30.
Yeah, it's too small. It's move your window, expand it, make it 8 to 9:30. You understand? When you now see after 9:30, then you come, because that's 8 to 8:30 is not a window. It's too. That's what I'm saying. But it depends on your business. Can your business accommodate it? Right? That's
what I'm saying.
Yeah. And then sometimes we also think our business cannot accommodate it, but they can. That's the truth. You know, so I think we need to be, you can be more flexible with that time, especially, you know, if your business can accommodate it. Then if you say people are coming at 8 to 45, then they make it 8 to 9. When they start coming after 9, then it becomes a problem. But I think you should have a window and, you know, try to be flexible with time. It's not just because of the generation. Also consider the city that we're in. Lagos is crazy. I think even for any generation, it can be difficult. And, you know, one thing that people don't understand about Gen Zs is that, remember that they're the youngest of the workforce. They don't have the control. In as much as people complain about Gen Zs, they also don't control their space. Remember, they're living in someone's house. They don't have a space of their own. They might be sharing a room. They don't have control over when the generator comes on. They don't pay the bill. There's a lot of things people, you know, like we need to take into context. A 40-year-old, a 35-year-old is in their house. You understand? So, you know, the dynamics are just
Yeah.
a little different. So I think we need to just bear that in mind, you know, especially with working remotely. I know your situation is not working remotely, but these are some of the things, the issues I have noticed that come up with them. They have more issues than other generations because they don't have control over their
Yeah.
space. Yeah. So I'm not siding, but I'm
Okay.
just saying that we can, I think that issue. But what your
No,
focus
I know.
is on the deliverable. Now, if when that work is not coming through, after you've given this accommodation, now that's when you know that accountability is not there. So I think that's what we should be.
Okay. Then.
So I think I just take
Awesome.
more questions. Yeah, because of time. Thank you very much. So Chioma, a question from you, then Olakunle, and I think Rosemary, and then we're done. Thank you.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone.
Chioma,
Good
how are you
afternoon,
doing?
Madam Adora. I'm fine,
Nice to
thank
see
you. Thank you so much for this great opportunity. I'm so happy to be in your class once more again.
Thank
Okay,
you.
like I was chatting with you yesterday and explaining to you. Now you talk about if we work directly with our CEO, we knowing really what they are trying to achieve. Yeah. In the place where I work, like for example, we lack staff in this organization, and now I just serve as HR intern. And then considering how I came into the organization just like an intern, and currently there is no sitting HR, I'm just the one sitting in here and doing stuff. Now, I'm thinking of like posting job application and all of that, but looking at the contract that is already existing here, I see that most of we have contract staff because like it's a care organization where people do therapies and all of those things. So we have lots of clinicians that are contract. We just have few persons in the office. Now, looking at the contract we have, in this our contract, like I see no benefit for staff, nothing at all. It's just like salary, your pay, and that's all. Now, when I go on LinkedIn and I look at jobs, I see different organizations post different job. Like for now, I want to post a job for behavioral assistant.
Yeah.
If I look at the jobs that are on behavioral assistant that have already been posted without benefits, you see that nobody goes for those jobs. But now, if I have to post, it will still be the same thing. Jobs without benefits. So like my fear is that, and it's like, okay, you are the HR, we need people, you need to employ people, you need to do this. But the organization for me, I feel is not giving that enablement, because you can't be asking people to work, and aside their salary, there is nothing that will attract them to get the job. And once again, there was an incident where I tried to like communicate something to my CEO. She took it in another dimension and took it out on me. It has to be several explanations before she could understand, okay, this is actually where I'm driving at. So for me now, I look at myself like I'm in a kind of phase because I don't know what to say. And being in a place where I am, like these people here in America, and they are too oversensitive. Everything is like, I don't know, like they take things to the extreme. Sometimes you say, you know how we could just in Nigeria say things, everything has a great meaning. So you have to be careful what you say, how you relate with people and all of that. Because like, I want to have a meeting with her and I'm going to ask her like, look, what are you really trying to achieve, just like you advised. So I would also know and know how to come in, because now, as at 2 days ago, we had a staff resigned, and this is really affecting business because we have lots of referrals. Nobody are there to do the job. So like, what's your advice for me?
Okay, good, Chioma. And I think you're in a great position to make a change, because obviously from what you've described, there's a lot you can actually offer this CEO. And, you know, it sounds like a small business, like the way you described, you know, and you've already, like, part of the things I was talking about, data-driven insights, you know, gather those insights from LinkedIn posts to show that, you know, those ones, nobody's applying to them. You understand? You see, CEOs listen to the language of business and its numbers. If you one of the biggest mistakes you can make is to tell a CEO, like, make a sweeping statement that you can't prove. It erodes your credibility, right? So don't go around and say no one is going to apply for this job. Come out and say, look, I went to LinkedIn. These are like 10 similar jobs, 8 similar jobs. I noticed that, 90% of the similar jobs that didn't have any benefits, nobody applied. Yeah, those are the kind of conversations, when you're engaging with that kind of conversation, then they listen to you. They know that, what, this person knows what they're talking about. This is not just someone who's just playing around, right? And the second thing is that one of the big skills that we need as HR people is cultural sensitivity. And, it's happening to you because obviously you're in a different country in America. But, this is something that happens everywhere. We need to be sensitive to different people. And the good thing is that, like you said, you're having a meeting. The best way you can find out what somebody wants is by asking them. Don't assume. You're going to have a meeting with your CEO. Ask your CEO what they're trying to achieve. Ask her what keeps her awake at night. Ask her what her headache is. Honestly, it might even be therapeutic for her, herself. And I mean it in the sense that a lot of leaders are not used to people asking them how they feel and what's going on and what their problems are. Leaders are used to solving everybody else's problems. So I think a leader is always happy, to have someone that seems like they're in their corner, trying to help them tackle their problems. The best you will get from this leader is if, she sees that you're really genuinely trying to understand her problem and you're working in that direction. But when you know that some of the decisions she's making is not going to lead her to that result she wants, then you can tackle her. And what do I mean by tackle her? Is like, you want this, but if you do this, you won't get this. So then you'll be speaking her language because you're helping her achieve her objective. There is nothing like whenever you speak to a CEO and you're talking about what they want to achieve because it's what they have told you, you can always use that to manage them because you're moving towards what they're trying to achieve, right? And you guys are in sync. So I just say align with her. And if you're really in her corner, when you see her making moves or decisions that won't help her, give her not your opinion based on facts and data. And I believe that you probably end up being one of her best allies, no matter how you might think it is now. So I'll take 2 more questions. Okay, so I can see, okay, Kunle, was it Kunle? I'm not sure, did I speak to Kunle before? Kunle, then Rosemary, then T. Yeah, okay. Kunle, I've asked you to unmute, yes, thank you. Yes, Kunle. Okay, right. Okay, so Rosemary, you wanted to ask a question. Hi, Rosemary, are you there? Yeah. Okay, I can't hear Rosemary, so I just, T, I want to believe, is that Tolu? I'll ask you to unmute anyway.
Yeah, hi. Can you hear me?
Yeah, hi, how are you?
I'm fine, Adara. This is a wonderful one. Yeah, it's Julie. Yeah, and I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. So I just want to kind of touch a bit on everything you said and kind of validate it. So I was speaking with a partner recently, and we're talking about the jobs, future work and the kind of works that you need to align your kids with. And I remember talking about the relevance of HR in the future. And I'm happy that, in the HR space, we're beginning to think like this because, like you mentioned, the world has become digitalized. The business world is very agile. Things are going nimble, fast. And if you're not well aligned, we're going to become irrelevant. And that's just the truth. So it's so important that we need to stay relevant. And the only way we stay relevant is to move with the tide. People talk about flexibility and all these other things. I tell people that it's not just enough for you to be flexible. It's important that you are fluid. Fluidity basically means that you're able to, get into the mold, basically.
Yes.
So whatever happens, you fit into your mold. So another thing that I think you mentioned, I also wanted to, stress or buttress is the talk about CEOs and data. So I run a business with a partner, and what you've said is so very, very important. Data, the CEOs understand numbers, but I think from an HR perspective, it's important that you show the data, but besides the data, you also need to come up with options and solutions. So you need to let them know. So it's basically more of, how does this data, how does it drive the value realization? What is the value? What's the benefit? And if also based on the skill set, based on the technology that we have in the organization, what can we do? So if, for instance, you have an organization that has like zero skill set or zero technology or 10% technology and all that, you can't expect them to start moving at 100%.
No way.
How do they move from, that's where they are to the next stage? And so basically what I'm saying is the work or the future of work, what exactly does it mean to my organization based on where we are? So the first thing is kind of doing an analysis of where we are, kind of as is assessments, right? Where are we? Where do we need to be? How do we get there and cut ourselves slacks? So there's going to be a whole lot of things, around change. And I also think that, I know that one of the things that HR professionals are supposed to be is change agents. And I really think when you think about being a change agent, it's really kind of helping even the CEO understand the value and helping them, drive the vision of the company. I think the most important thing, or what I heard when I heard a lot of people talk about the CEOs and all that, is that they're not necessarily in alignment with the vision of the company. There's been a lot of things about HR being transactional and how we need to be strategic business managers. I hate buzzwords, and I think sometimes it's a buzzword, but the reality is it has to be real. What is the vision of the organization? Now we live in a world where the vision keeps changing based on wherever it is, right? So how do we make sure that we are constantly in sync with the vision of the organization? So those are the things we need to start thinking from an HR perspective. Yes, it's important that we talk about the payroll, the performance, and all the other, transactional things of HR. But the only way we can remain relevant so that, we don't, you were talking about, AI and, machine and human. It's real. It's something that is already happening in the United States and, in a lot of places. And that's the future of work. How do we make sure that we remain relevant? How do we make sure that all those things, right, we can do it? We, not just as people in organization, but that the HR profession is in alignment and we are strategic. So I think you've already given a lot of insights and all that. And I just wanted to say thanks for sharing all that.
Salute. Nice to see you on. Thank you. It's a good time for Americans, eh?
You can say that.
Usually our sessions are in the morning. Right. So good. Great. So I just want to wrap up and just say thank you to everyone for being here and participating, because we could have all been elsewhere. And I hope that this is time that was well spent. And I think just to wrap up in summary, really, staying trendy is not really just about, the jeans and the t-shirts or the iPhones and the fancy stuff. It's really about us keeping up and being abreast with the skills that we need to deliver to our stakeholders so that we continue to deliver stakeholder value. It's about us, being aligned to the vision of our organizations. It's about us, about us as professionals. It's about us as people as well that know our craft and can help, individuals, help employees, help businesses, deliver those objectives that they wish to. And just in summary, it's a big part is about us having self-awareness, knowing where we stand, auditing our own selves. Where do we stand in terms of helping organizations, helping employees, helping being good citizens and, delivering value to all our stakeholders. Where do we stand? Where are we now in terms of our skill sets, our competencies, knowledge, our abilities? And wherever we find that we are, how do we close those gaps? And I think we've discussed some of those gaps, and a lot of those gaps are around business acumen, data-driven decision-making, inclusion and diversity, building talents, and where we find talents, and opening our minds to, where do we get talent from? And then, of course, managing remote, a new remote work. So doing performance management differently. So whatever it is that you decide, I would say that don't look at it. It might be too much to look at all of it. Just decide like 2 areas, even if it's one area. Because focus helps you close gaps quicker, so that we're not overwhelmed trying to do different things. And if I was to choose one, honestly, now I would choose digital skills. So I just want to say thank you very much to everyone. And on that note, goodbye until our next session. Thank you very much, everyone, and take care of yourself and have a great weekend. Bye-bye. So thank you. And thank you to everyone who was part of organizing this. I want to say a big thank you to the Kendall team for putting this topic together, doing all the marketing, the sales, just around, getting people to attend. And thank you for everyone who honored the invitation. Good. Take care of yourself. Bye-bye. Bye.